Hello, my name is Hugh Agro. I'm the president and CEO of Revival Gold. We're advancing the Beartrack-Arnett gold project, some 4.6 million ounces of gold in western United States. Happy to be with you, Merlin.
Hugh, good to see you again. Thank you for the introduction. It's not just you today, though, is it? You've brought Dan along with you. Can you introduce Dan, and then perhaps Dan could say a few words for himself?
Yes, we're really happy to have Dan, our chief geologist, with us. Dan is leading the charge on some of the more exciting exploration work that we've been doing. He is a master's in geology from the University of Nevada, an Idaho resident with his young family. And Dan has got quite a track record of discovery in the western U.S. He was part of the discovery team on the Silicon project, which Agro is now taking forward as its number one development project in the United States. Dan, welcome.
Thanks, Hugh. So I've joined this group about a year ago, and I've really enjoyed getting into orogenic gold systems and trying to bring some new techniques and new thoughts to the project.
Dan, thank you. We will come onto the geology, but before we do that, Hugh, it's a terrible market out there. Everybody's just buying tech stocks. In fact, they're not even doing that. They're just buying NVIDIA. No one cares about the gold sector. In fact, the mining sector in general, it seems it can feel quite a lonely space. That looking at the share price can be a pretty depressing daily habit. How are you staying positive, and what are the plans for the company, just kind of in broad scope for the year?
Lonely indeed. And, I sympathize with our investors who've been patiently watching here, but we've seen this game before. We saw in the 2000s the rise of the speculative tech market and the aftermath of that. We cannot forget that the small cap space generally has suffered over the last 14 years or so, and the junior mining space alongside of that. But the fundamentals remain strong. We've got central banks buying gold in the face of a rising U.S. dollar. That's a very good sign. We've got senior gold producers continuing to look for development projects like ours in geography around the world, and especially in good locations. And not only that, but we've seen the Asian companies now start competing for those projects, most recently with what we've seen in Namibia, Asino Resources, and a competing bid from the Chinese. So, look, this is not just a Bay Street or Fleet Street phenomena, this global mining business. This is now worldwide, and the fundamentals for our business are just getting better.
Hugh, you're preaching to the choir in terms of my views on the gold industry. I fundamentally believe that it's an excellent store of value, and it offers the same other aspects of financial instruments that other types of money does, but in particular it's the store of value which really sets it apart. And I think your point about the central banks there is crucial, is that they're continuing to buy. Right, but when it comes to development assets, projects like Beartrack and Arnett, what's the work plan for the year? What's your strategic focus at the moment for at the asset level?
Well, listen, in a word, the technical work has gone extremely well. We've over the last 6 years put together a resource, as I said on the outset, at 2.2 million ounces of measured and indicated, and 2.4 million ounces of inferred, and that's a big discovery over the last 6 years. In fact, the second largest in the western United States by our numbers in the last decade. So that work has gone very well. Our PFS on the first phase of the project, completed last summer, was a very constructive and successful process. But that's not enough. And we recognize that. What we recognize is that the structure of the business needs to change in order for us to get a different outcome in a very tough market. That means today we're looking at potential strategic investments, we're looking at opportunities to combine with other businesses, and we're looking at acquisition opportunities. We see some excellent value out there in the space, and we intend to capitalize on that structurally through corporate action, not just technical work. Meanwhile, though, the technical work continues, and that's part of the reason why we're happy to have Dan with you today to talk about some of that, Merlin. But there's a lot of work we can do with the data that we already have that's efficient, that helps demonstrate the scale and the potential of the Beartrack-Arnett project for so much more. And that's the work that we're focused on today, managing our dollars to minimal spend with maximum effect.
Thanks, Hugh. Yeah, I'm a great believer in kind of value through the drill bit and smart geology. About a week ago, you put out a news release showing that you picked up some new licenses to the south. You also spoke about, I think it was the first time I'd seen in your literature that you'd spoken about 2 orogenic gold systems. Maybe, Dan, that was an input from you. I've spoken with Steve Priestmeyer before about kind of these varying systems, but I think it was the first time I'd seen it in print. And you'd also kind of reinterpreted some geophysics. So perhaps, Dan, it'd be a good time to kind of bring you on and just, if you could explain what you saw when you first joined the company in terms of your approach to the geology and where your thinking has reached now. That'd be, I think, a kind of a useful bit of context.
Yeah, sounds good. Thanks, Merlin. I think that the concept of the multiple orogenic systems comes from work that's been done in the past, and also having a structural geologist named Brett Davis out on the project this spring. And we're really trying to look at the system as a whole, and we see a lot of the same structural components that exist in the overall Beartrack trend at Arnett. In particular, we see multiple vein sets at Arnett, some of these north-northeast trending structures, which have been the key controls at the Beartrack system, also seem to be present at Arnett, and some of the structural features, mineralization coming into and breaking through myelinite zones. These are features that are consistent with the overall orogenic deposit type, and are kind of the keys to us better understanding our system so that we can explore a little bit more effectively moving forward.
I think if I understand you correctly, you're trying to kind of work out the pattern or the signature for where the mineralization occurs, where you know where it is, so that you can reapply that signature, or you can look for those signals in other places and potentially make discoveries in different places.
Yeah, that's right. So for example, with the Haiti deposit, we knew we had a sheeted vein swarm that makes up the majority of the resource, but we went back to the basics, looking at the core and some of the higher grade intercepts from past drilling, identified a different vein texture and a different vein orientation that really hadn't been the focus in the past. And using that orientation and some modeling, we were able to turn the rig around 90 degrees from the way we normally drilled and have a really nice intercept, the best intercept of the year. I think what was that, should have it, but 20.5 meters at 3.9 grams. So that's one of the better intercepts in that Haiti system, in a structural zone that actually is more similar to a Beartrack orientation than the classic sheeted Haiti veins.
Does that mean that you have got a new phase of exploration in the Arnett area, where you've got some of these kind of shallower open pits planned? Yeah,
I think we can continue to chase those structures around. Certainly, both structures are at play, and where the sheeted veins and the high angle veins come together, that's where you get kind of the best mineralization. So we would continue with the work we've been doing in the past, but really try to focus in on the higher grade components of that system.
And what I was just going to ask, what are your vectors to do that? I mean, how will you find the confluence of those two systems, the sheeted veins and the high angle structures? Is that something you can spot through mapping, or do you use aerial photography or remote sensing or geophysics? You know, what are your instruments, levers, and tools? Yeah,
well, there's been a lot of historic trenching work that was done on the project, so we've used a lot of that to understand the structures at the surface, coding the different vein types and textures and the drill holes that exist to be able to track those corridors through the existing drilling. And then using a little bit more rigorous oriented core moving forward to really make sure that we're understanding the orientation of the veins when we hit them and which way they're going.
Are you essentially talking about kind of incremental resource growth within the kind of the Haiti Arnett area? Is that what you're looking at there?
Well, I think there's two phases there. Certainly, you know, the drilling right around Haiti would be incremental growth and really trying to focus on some higher grade zones and maybe bring that grade up just a little bit. But that it's also looking at the project as a whole. So for example, this ridge target area was a structure that again is parallel to the Beartrack trend, is bounding the western side of a big intrusive complex. So it had a lot of similarities to the Beartrack trend. No exposure. It was covered by, we thought, tens of meters of cover. Turned out to be more than 100 meters in places, but under that we hit a significant zone of mineralization with a little bit different chemistry. That's more similar to a Beartrack type system. And so I think what we're seeing is that those structural features, that the keys to understanding the orientations of those structures potentially have the potential to identify new and potentially bigger deposits in the Arnett complex.
Yeah, just to jump in here, to give some perspective to what we're doing here, the average grade in the PFS for the heap leach phase of the project is about 0.75 grams per ton gold. The drill hole that Dan just referenced, 20 some odd meters of about 4 grams per ton gold, right outside the heap leach proven and probable reserve pit shell is really impactful, right? In terms of both mine life and in terms of bringing the grade up. And again, just to put this into perspective, every year of free cash flow in that project that we can add to the heap leach mine plan is about $50 million at $1,800 gold. So these are important drill holes proximal to the existing pit and around the Haiti area. But what Dan's also saying is we're opening up the potential for so much more. And the scope, the difference in distance between the ridge target on the one end of this area of focus and Haiti is somewhere between 750 meters and a kilometer. So we're talking about some pretty big area with mineralization scattered throughout.
Is there a kind of an exploration target between ridge and Haiti? I mean, is that part of your area to be tested?
Yeah, sure. There are some historic underground mines actually between the two deposits. So there are certainly a number of different targets within that area. But again, we're trying to identify the age of the different structures that cut the system, the relative sense of displacement on them, and try to hit each cell as it steps through the project. Because there's a significant amount of faulting and offsets throughout the system.
Have you got a geophysical technique that helps you see the structure? I mean, MAG has often helped in many exploration camps. I don't know what you're using here.
Sure, absolutely. We love MAG. We've actually benefited from some of the critical minerals work that's been done by the USGS and the Idaho Geological Survey. So there's really good regional MAG that covers the project. We also had some old MAG on the project. We also have radiometrics throughout the whole project. There's some IP, the historic IP that we just recently reprocessed, and also some more recent IP that's been done. So we're stacking all that up together. We've also gone to using a handheld magnetic susceptibility meter on all the core we drill, and we find that really nicely defines the structures. The mineralization is magnetite destructive, and so you can clearly see a low where the mineralization comes into a otherwise background magnetic signature.
In your news release that you put out last week, you spoke about adding ground way to the southwest, or kind of for the next 2, 3, 4, 5 kilometers southwest from Jos, on the Beartrack trend. What do you call it? The kind of the Panther Creek Coiner fault system. Is that part of the thinking of the kind of the Haiti kind of northern thing, or is this? Are you more purely thinking on the kind of the Beartrack system as you kind of expand that area down there?
Yeah, I think the focus for that is the Beartrack system. Look, we've got over 5 kilometers mineralized where it's exposed at the surface. In historic exploration, the past explorers followed up placer workings, a big placer district, to find the outcropping gold, drilled under the outcropping gold and extended that structure. Kind of I wouldn't say the low-hanging fruit, but the easier of the exploration place, and moved north to the divide. But that structure continues to the south for another 4 or 5 kilometers, where it's essentially seen no drilling. And so I think that the next phase of exploration on this project, and in a lot of the western U.S., is exploring undercover. It's a little bit higher risk, but we have some geophysics and some structural modeling that allows us to really vector into those targets to the south, and we think has a possibility of being a game changer for the project. project.
And that's the structure goes underneath. What did you call it? Is it the Leesburg Basin? Is that the sediments? What are they called? Sorry.
Yeah, the Leesburg Basin. It's kind of a complex package of volcanics and sedimentary rocks that occur in a pull-apart basin on the west side of the Coiner Fault.
And do you have any indication of kind of how deep that stratigraphic package might be, or is that just kind of a speculation at the moment?
Well, the structure, the thing that's interesting is the structure at Joss that's mineralized also is bounding a big step in the basin. And so with geophysics, it's difficult for us to direct detect the mineralization, but we can detect the offset along that structure, right? It's a significant resistivity contrast. So what we're doing with the geophysics is kind of tracking that to the south. So on the east side, the cover is 100, 200 meters thick. The deepest part of the basin, I think, that we know of is up to 500 meters thick. But the mineralization, even in the Joss area, can be shallower than that, essentially in the footwall of that structure.
So basically like a kind of a mini rift system where the kind of the central bit will kind of will drop down and have sediment accumulating or rocks accumulating on the upper portion. But if the mineralization is on the bit which doesn't drop down, then the mineralization can therefore remain high.
Yeah, that's correct.
And you, in the middle of your news release, you suddenly got you were talking about kind of Mesoproterozoic and these siltites and silty quartzites. Why do you mention those? Is that because those really are the kind of the more favorable? Are those a brittle host? Is that a kind of a sediment that cracks and allows the fractures to form in it that gives you kind of a greater target?
Yeah, based on the drilling that we've done so far in the current resource, the best mineralization appears to be in that Mesoproterozoic siltite and quartzite package, where the structure, the shear zone, goes into a Rapakivi granite. There is also mineralization, but it appears to be somewhat lower grade. So we're encouraged by the presence of that favorable host rock moving to the south. And in Joss, where we have the highest grade mineralization, we're looking at quartzite on quartzite with the shear zone going through it. And
that's principally a space kind of creation. It's not a change in chemistry. I guess it was a change in pressure which kind of stimulated precipitation rather than any chemical change.
It could be some of both. There's certainly stratigraphy within that package that has a bit more biotite. It might be a bit more reactive, but I think it's a rheologic contrast as much as anything with the brittle rocks allowing open space and allowing these fluids to go.
And I saw some of the resist. So go on, Hugh. You wanted to chip in?
Yeah, I just want to point out here that just again to step back and put context to this. We've got 5.5 kilometers of mineralized trend, and we have the experience with over 150 kilometers of drilling in that trend to know the signature for what might lead to more mineralization. And that puts us significantly ahead of a greenfields project with just a sort of a concept to test. We have a proven that first 5.5 kilometers of that concept. And what I think is really exciting about the work that Dan, our structural consultants, our geophysicists have been able to do of late is outline the next 5 kilometers of trend. And the chances that we're successful in that trend, I would say, based on what we see in the first half of the trend, are quite high. And I want to remind viewers that the Joss target area is some 850,000 ounces of gold south from the south pit to the bottom end of Joss at 4 grams per ton gold, within which we've got a high-grade core running 6 to 8 grams per ton gold. And that is relatively continuous across over a kilometer of trend and open. And so we're really excited about where that will go to. That's an obvious area for us to follow up with. And it also gives us a lot of confidence that the continuation of that structure to the south, which we control 100% and which is fully permitted for drilling, will be very productive for us going forward.
What's your budget for the year, Hugh? I mean, because in these kind of development things, when you've got a near-term development program, shareholders sometimes get a bit twitchy when geologists kind of get excited about drilling.
Yeah, well, we're first and foremost owners in the business, so we get twitchy about anything that isn't going to lead to more value for our shareholders. So to answer your question, our budget right now is relatively limited. It's focused on geophysics. It's focused on reinterpretation, field work. But what we want to do is build a strong business case for partner funding, long-term partner funding to go in and do on a shareholder-friendly basis some of that heavy lifting with the drilling to come. It's a matter of building up the concept, the targets, completing the team, the exercise of target selection. That's where we're focused right now. And as I pointed out earlier, we've gone through a full EA process, environmental assessment process, and with that, a very extensive drill permitting exercise, which gives us wide license to do the exploration we want to do in terms of drilling and other things when the time suits. Right now, it's not a good time in the market to be issuing shares, so we want to do as little of that as possible while still building value in the project.
Left to my own devices, I would be drilling into the drill target or the drill selection process, just wanting to kind of really pinpoint what are the kind of the vectors on the geology and the geophysics and the coincident anomalies that will give you a ranked series of targets. But I appreciate that that's perhaps not everybody's way to spend an afternoon.
We're talking about this big structural corridor to the south, but we're also doing a fair amount of work on the northern part of the structural corridor where it's been drilled more heavily, really looking at the structural controls on the higher grades within that resource and the chutes that develop in this system. Look, orogenic systems have big, long strike lengths, but the money's really made in some of the higher grade chutes. And so we've used the structural work that's done by Brett Davis, and then some additional work on top of that to understand the higher grade controls within each of those pods of the resource and trying to take that and move that south, as well as hopefully at some point test the extensions of those which remain open. So I think we're doing both. We're not solely stepping south into a basin and blindly testing targets.
Indeed not. And smart geology can add value to a business case, because if you can highlight multi-million ounce potential or camp scale potential, and not that you haven't already, but if you can continue to do that, and if you can continue to open up prospects and horizons, as well as adding incremental ounces to an existing resource base, then that is a good use of geologists and a good use of funds towards geology. Hugh, perhaps in kind of your concluding remarks, what can we look for in the next few months? What's the kind of the news flow that you're kind of brewing? Well,
we've got a lot of work underway right now, pedaling beneath the surface of the water, which is difficult to talk about in too much detail. But a lot of partnership discussions going on, a lot of opportunities coming our way in this difficult market. We have a solid team. We have the backing of some of the best institutional investors in the space. We have a discovery which, as I pointed out earlier, is one of the biggest discoveries in the United States in the last decade. It's attracting a lot of eyeballs. It's difficult to see that in the market right now amongst retail investors in a challenging small cap world. But the game is a little bit longer than sort of day-to-day trading, and the objective is to deliver those kind of 3, 4, 5, 6 times returns that our investors are looking for, and we're hot on that trail.
Hugh, Dan, thank you very much. It's been great talking to you today. Maybe see you round the traps at PDAC. If not, I look forward to the next update that we get from Revival Gold.
Thank you, Merlin.
Thanks, Merlin.